Are you contemplating divorce, or have you just been blindsided that your partner wants a divorce? Here's a rundown of the process and the pieces of divorce in North Carolina. The first thing to know is that in North Carolina, you have to live separate and apart for 1 year before you can file for divorce and actually get divorced. So what happens in that 1 year period? Let's talk about money, because that's a big thing that leads to divorce and is a problem after the divorce is initiated. So post-separation support is the payment that you may be entitled to receive, or you may be obligated to pay to your spouse, former spouse, during the 1 year separation in North Carolina. You may have heard of alimony, so think about this as pre-alimony. Before the divorce is all the way through, you might be entitled to get post-separation support. Post-separation support is calculated by looking at the actual needs of a dependent spouse. So that's step number one. You have to have a dependent spouse that actually was reliant on the step number two, supporting spouse. Both of those things have to exist. And then the supporting spouse actually has to have an ability to pay. If all those three things are there, then you either are entitled to post-separation support or you're obligated to pay it. And how we get that number, it's a work of art. It's what the judge says or what you negotiate with the other side. There's no calculator, there's no easy way to know exactly how much money you'd be entitled to. Once the divorce is finalized, then we're looking at alimony. And alimony payments, it's about the actual cost and then the duration. So what is the amount and duration? Again, this is kind of a work of art. Sometimes it's a rule of thumb that it's about half the amount of time of the marriage. Sometimes it's much less, sometimes it's much more. There's really no way to know this except for experience in court, so make sure you have an experienced attorney that has dealt with alimony cases so that they can advise you on what a judge would be likely to do, and then you use that information to either go to court and have a judge tell you the alimony amount and duration, or you negotiate that with the other side. So, depending on all of the information and everything that happened in the marriage and afterwards, you might be obligated to pay or you might be entitled to receive alimony. The big thing with alimony in North Carolina, this is really the only area where marital misconduct is extremely important. If there was infidelity in the marriage, domestic violence, or just outright making one another's lives intolerable, then that is potentially going to increase the amount of alimony or decrease the amount of alimony, depending on whether it's the receiver or the giver of that alimony that was the cause of the marital misconduct. But it's important to remember, alimony is the same as with post-separation support. First, there has to be a dependent spouse. Second, there has to be a supporting spouse. And third, the supporting spouse has to have a current ability to pay. Let's shift gears to children. If you had children within the marriage, this is undoubtedly going to complicate the entire process, because our kids are our heart. Our kids are the things that matter most to us. So yes, dollars and cents matter, but the biggest arguments and the most tension that I see as a family and divorce lawyer is when it comes to children, because you've got physical and legal custody to deal with. So legal custody is going to be decision making, education, religion, medical, things of that nature. On the flip side, you also have physical custody to deal with. And so that's the actual visitation schedule or custody schedule. How much are you going to see your kid? So the most important thing to know when you're talking about child custody is that North Carolina's standard is best interest of the child. So it's not about what you want, it's not about what your ex wants, it is about what is truly best for the child. And so when you go into court, that is the lens that the judge is going to look at all of the evidence from, is what can I do, what setup, both legal and physical custody, is going to be of the best interest of the child. Finally, let's talk about dividing the assets or equitable distribution here in North Carolina. The intention is to have an equitable split of the marital estate. So the first question is, what is the marital estate? In North Carolina, it's anything that is basically gain bought during the marriage. So if you buy a house as a married couple and you don't have a prenup that says otherwise, then that's going to be a marital asset. Income during the marriage, retirement account growth during the marriage, increase in equity, but it's also debt. So if you take on debt during the marriage, that's going to be marital assets and debt that has to be divided. The goal is for it to be equitable, which does not always mean equal. So we talk about a 50-50 split, that'd be great, and that's a great negotiation standpoint. But when you get to court, the judge is gonna actually look what is fair and what is equitable and how they divide the estate. And there you have it. That's a quick little rundown on all of the different aspects that you could be facing when you're going through a divorce in North Carolina.